Welcome to English Every Day. Improve your English skills one day at a time. Whether you're just starting or looking to refine your fluency, we're here to guide you with practical tips, engaging conversations, and fun lessons. Let's make English a part of your everyday life. Ready to learn? Let's get started.
All right, let's dive right in, shall we? Prepositions. Those sneaky little words. They can be tricky, right?
You really can.
But you know we love a good grammar challenge here, so we're going deep on prepositions today. You've done a ton of research.
Yeah.
And I have to say, your notes are impressive. We're going to dig into all that and uncover the coolest stuff about prepositions.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so to get us started, we have this article. It's from English Club called Tips for Teaching Prepositions.
Okay.
And it's by Joseph Esberger. He actually wrote an ebook called English Prepositions List, so he knows his stuff, you know.
Oh, he definitely does. It's interesting, actually, that this article focuses on teaching prepositions.
Right.
It gives us kind of a different angle, like we're learning about them by figuring out how to explain them to someone else.
Yeah, I like that, like learning the secrets behind the magic trick.
Exactly.
And speaking of secrets, did you know that some of the most common prepositions are like superstars? They're in the top 25 most used words in English.
It's true. You don't always think about it, but we use prepositions constantly to
Right.
show relationships between things, like where things are, when things happen, how we move around.
Yeah.
Makes sense they'd be up there with the most common words.
It's true. It's like they're kind of like the supporting actors in a movie.
Oh, I like that.
They might not have the leading role, but the whole story falls apart without them.
Right.
Okay, but before we go too far, let's get back to the basics for just a second. What exactly is a preposition? Like, how would you explain it to someone who's totally new to all this grammar stuff?
Okay, imagine you're describing a scene. You might say something like, the book on the table, or walking towards the sunset.
Okay.
Need those little words, on and towards.
Yeah.
Those are your prepositions. They're like bridges connecting the nouns, like book and table, or walking and sunset. They tell you how those words relate to each other.
Oh, okay.
Like where the book is, or the direction of the walk.
I get it. So we're using these bridges, these prepositions, all the time without even realizing it.
We do. And the article even points out some of the top 25 words in English, like to, of, in, for, on, all prepositions.
Wow, that's crazy. So tiny, but so important.
Exactly. And it's not just single words either. You have your simple prepositions, one word like before or under.
Okay.
But then there are these complex ones made up of multiple words like according to or in spite of.
So it could be a single word like before,
Yeah.
but it can also be like a whole phrase doing the same job.
Yep. A whole team of words working together to express one relationship.
Interesting. And, another thing I thought was really interesting in the article is it talks about how prepositions aren't just about location,
Right.
like we think of in or on, under, but it can also be about time, like during or after, or movement, like towards or from. It's amazing how much one little word can do. Like, just think about the word on.
Oh, yeah. On is a good example. Yeah. You can have on the table, which is about place.
And then on Sunday, which is about time on purpose,
Okay.
which is about intention,
Yeah.
or even on time, which is more about punctuality, all different meanings depending on the context.
That's wild. Okay. I have to ask you about this because I hear it all the time. Can you end a sentence with a preposition or not?
Oh, the infamous rule. It's one of those grammar myths that just won't die.
Right. And this article actually addresses it.
Yeah, it does a good job of debunking it. I mean, think about a sentence like, where are you from? Perfectly natural.
Right.
Forcing yourself to avoid ending a sentence with a preposition can make you sound so stiff and awkward.
Totally. So when is it okay to end a sentence with a preposition?
Well, the article talks about a few key situations. Questions that start with, who, where, or what, relative clauses, infinitives, and passive sentences. Basically, if it sounds natural and you're not twisting your sentence into a pretzel to avoid it, you're probably fine. Okay, good to know. Now, this is something I personally always get tripped up on. The whole preposition versus adverb thing. How can you tell them apart?
The key difference is that prepositions always need an object, a noun or a pronoun, to connect to. Adverbs, they can stand alone. They describe a verb or an adjective or even another adverb.
So, like in that example from the article, they're in the kitchen.
Yeah.
In is a preposition
Right.
because it's connected to kitchen.
Yeah.
But in please come in, it's an adverb
Exactly.
because it's describing the verb come.
You got it. It's all about the connection. Now, here's a little rule about prepositions that I find super helpful. A preposition is always followed by a noun. Well, technically, it's connected to a noun in some way.
Always. No exceptions.
Think of it this way. A preposition can't do its job without a noun. Sometimes the noun might come before the preposition, like, what country do you come from?
Yeah.
But that connection is always there.
Oh. That
Right.
actually makes a lot of sense.
Right.
It's like, you've given me a decoder ring for prepositions now. I love that this article is written from a teacher's perspective. It's
Yeah.
like getting all the insider tips for actually learning this stuff.
One thing I really liked is how it talks about teaching prepositions by meaning categories. Like, instead of just memorizing a big list of words,
Yeah.
you group them by how they function, like place, time, movement. Makes so much more sense, right?
Yeah, it does. And it talks about using pictures and activities to make it more engaging.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was just thinking, it's so much easier to understand under and over
Mhm.
if you have a picture of a cat under a table.
Absolutely. Visuals can be super helpful for understanding prepositions.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember not everyone learns the same way. What works for one person might not work for another.
That's so true. And that actually leads into another really important point the article brings up. All the challenges that learners face, especially if their first language is different from English.
Ah, yes, that's huge. Different languages handle prepositions in different ways, which can lead to all sorts of errors.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, someone might say, she reminds me of my childhood, instead of she reminds me of my childhood, just because their first language doesn't use a preposition in that context.
It's amazing how those subtle differences between languages can really trip you up. But knowing about them can help you avoid those mistakes.
Exactly. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say. And sometimes you even have the same preposition meaning totally different things in different languages,
Oh, what?
which can lead to some pretty funny mix-ups.
Yeah, I bet. It's like we're explorers in the jungle of grammar here.
I like that.
Always some new discovery. Okay, there's one preposition that I think deserves like a special shout out. To.
Oh, yeah.
It can be a preposition, but it's also part of an infinitive.
Right. It's like a word with a double life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a preposition connecting to a noun, and sometimes it's hanging out with a verb, making an infinitive.
Okay, yeah, I think I see what you mean. Like, in I look forward to lunch. To is definitely a preposition, right? It goes with lunch.
Yeah.
But in I want to eat, to is part of to eat, the infinitive.
Exactly. It all depends on what to is doing in the sentence. Is it showing a relationship to a noun, or is it part of the verb? The article has some good examples to help you figure that out.
Speaking of examples, there's that little mini quiz in the article.
Oh, yeah?
The one about the always a noun rule.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember those sentences?
Yeah, I think so.
The first one was, I would like to go now.
Okay.
And the second one was, she used to smoke. And the question is, how come to is followed by a verb in those cases if prepositions are always supposed to be with a noun?
Right. It's a bit of a trick question, but it makes you think. The answer is, in those sentences, to isn't actually acting like a preposition. It's part of the infinitive to go and to smoke. Yeah, the article is just trying to make sure you're paying attention to the whole concept.
Yeah.
A preposition always has a noun somewhere in the picture, even if it's not right next to it.
So you got to look at the bigger picture, not just the individual words.
Exactly. Context is king when it comes to prepositions.
I like that. Context is king.
It is.
So true. That's why the article talks about the importance of giving lots of examples when you're teaching prepositions,
Right.
Not just giving someone a list of words and definitions.
Right, because you have to see how they work in real sentences.
Yeah, you have to see them in action.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's just, abstract concepts.
So instead of just saying, like, on means in contact with a surface, you'd give an example like, the book is on the table.
Exactly. And then you can even have learners come up with their own sentences using the preposition. That way you know they really get it and they can use it in different situations.
Oh, that's a good idea. Like learning by doing.
Yeah. It's one thing to memorize definitions. It's another thing to actually use the language.
So true. It's interesting how we take prepositions for granted, but they really affect how we understand the world, don't they? Like they shape how we see space and time and relationships. It's a lot for such small words.
It is. It really gets to how language influences the way we think. I mean, think about it. Prepositions help us define our place in the world. They bring order to all our experiences.
Right, like they're giving us a framework for understanding everything.
Yeah, a framework for understanding and communicating.
Exactly. And the better we understand those little words, the better we can express ourselves.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's like we've been given this whole new set of tools for building better sentences.
Right.
More precise, more interesting. We've learned so much about prepositions, their forms, their functions, all the myths about them, how they can even change how we think.
Yeah, it's really made me appreciate those little words.
Me too. We use them every day, but we don't always stop and think about how they work. It's like peeking behind the scenes and seeing all the gears turning.
Exactly. All the hidden mechanisms of language.
Speaking of hidden, it makes you wonder, how much do prepositions actually affect how we see the world?
That's a good question.
They seem so small, but they shape how we understand things like relationships and space and time.
That's true. They do a lot of heavy lifting for such tiny words.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility. I mean, prepositions literally help us understand where we are in the world.
Right, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. They help us make sense of everything around us.
They give us a framework.
Yeah, a framework for understanding and for communicating.
And the better we understand that framework, the better we can use language.
Right. To express our ideas clearly, to connect with other people.
To really make our words matter.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've officially conquered the world of prepositions in this deep dive.
We have.
We've busted those myths, we've explored all the different ways they work, and we've even seen how they can influence our thoughts.
It's amazing what you can learn when you take a closer look at something.
It is. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is just how important these little words are. They're not just something you can throw around randomly.
Right, they have specific meanings, they create relationships.
They're the building blocks of clear communication.
And mastering them is key to mastering English.
Couldn't agree more. So, to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of language. There's always something new to discover.
Thank you for tuning in to English Every Day. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and remember, every small step brings you closer to fluency. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your progress in the comments below. Let's continue this journey together. See you in the next episode.